Welcome to yet another Gacha Hell, heroes, and this is Epic 7. The Deep has returned and Homelander is in Mortal Kombat. Oh wait, that's the 7, not Epic 7. Let me try that again. Welcome to Epic 7, a game full of wyvern slaying, PvP hell, gear re-rolling, and paying someone money to take off your armor until the next event so you can actually take it off for free. But don't worry, most of these only happen at the end of the game, so for a good chunk of the game, you're gonna be on a quest to destroy the Demon Lord in yet another high fantasy adventure, minus the isekai. Oh god damn it, another isekai schoolgirl. The story of Epic 7 puts you in the shoes of Rast, who looks like that one guy from the very obscure Tales game on the Wii that taught me a true man talks with his back, and then fires a giant laser that probably came from his ass. And of course, your bouncy kohai Mercedes. The goddess of the world wants you to defeat the Demon Lord, but you end up getting wasted instead, and she has no choice but to reset the world. Except she ran out of goddess juice or something and f***ing dies, because this is apparently the 6th time you have tossed yourself at the Demon Lord like an absolute dumb without maxing your stats. So she was forced to use that last bit of her power to send you back for the 7th time, which now makes this Epic 7, because it's the 7th time. Truly an act that was made in heaven. And so you set out on your journey with this floating fluff ball and your loyal not Marshu to slay the Demon Lord before he can wake up from his nap. After the very attractive Queen of the Kingdom, you wake up in, manages to pull off a sleep spell on him for 10 years, while the hero gets wrecked like 6 times in a row. But just as you are about to probably fail for the 7th time in a row, your friend has had enough of your terrible Dark Souls playthroughs and no longer wants to sit on the sidelines and play as player 2. So he takes the Demon Lord's power from himself, and to make things even worse, he now knows everything that happened in the last 6 loops. Which kinda sucks for you. And I really find it hard to blame this guy for going against you. At least until he drops the queen's HP to 0 and makes all the MILF enjoyers very sad, leaving her teenage son on the throne. So you begin traveling the world to hunt down the Demon Lord's fragments, from the obligatory school arc to liberating the slave trade, and realizing this game's art style really doesn't reflect how dark the story can get when a demonic cult shows up and starts making furry sacrifices. Which is for some reason synonymous with the Warhammer community. But since you're probably a gacha slave like many of the Epic 7 players are, then you are just here to watch your characters run across the screen to obtain some satisfaction from leveling characters in battles and dungeon crawling by fighting robots, furries. An absolute nightmare fuel from Madoka, which is totally a wholesome anime with a cute mascot. And let's say this one girl gets a bit ahead of herself. The sheer fact that they somehow incorporated a 3D dungeon map into a 2D game is nothing short of sorcery. Totally not sponsored by the Shadow Wizard Money Gang. And the game's extremely streamlined, allowing you to move from node to node in the story and side missions without having to go back to the map in most cases. Gameplay is as simple as running through maps and fighting waves of enemies with 2 skills per character, sometimes 1 skill and a passive alongside the ultimate skill, all of which can be charged up with soul, which you can then use to summon your guardian beast to attack. But besides, it has an auto battle anyway, so I doubt you're even gonna use manual battles outside of PvP and harder bosses. Your pet allows you to skip battles as well. Definitely heavily optimized for the E7 grind set with minimal effort as a fairly idle game once you get far enough with your unit levels. With all the collabs it keeps getting lately though, it has become the one game where you can play as Soul Bad Guy from Guilty Gear alongside Ram or Rem from ReZero. And it's pretty hard to pass off on them either way when Ram and Soul show up in your mailbox, and are fully upgradable in-game through the event when they run without having to roll the gacha. Unless you want Jacko for obvious reasons, or Emilia and Rem, then gacha hell waits. Except, they lock the Guilty Gear summons behind a story progression wall, but on the bright side, it'll probably be back the next year. And seriously though, as much as I was annoyed that I couldn't roll for Baiken and the gacha rates are not exactly very good for a casual player who just started about a month and a half ago, some characters are story locked or obtainable through companion missions with surprisingly doable conditions. And I am just about certain a new player could happily play this with the free characters. But even so, you really can't call this a gacha game unless you roll for SSRs. But if you do want one, make sure you save for pity because the SSR rate is about 1%, with 120 pity with no carryover across banners. Despite this though, it only gets better the more you play because they also have the Moonlight hero system that unlocks at the very beginning of the game. game. Just as you part from your MILF hunter Vildred, you get the chance to make him part of your team with a few restrictions, of course. The character you should choose though is Spectre Tenebria, and it really only just gets better for new players because they let you re-roll your very first summon as many times as you want to get the starter 5-star that you want in the selective summon. Probably to stop the number of re-roll accounts that are clogging the servers like in most other gacha games, but I'm not complaining. In terms of re-rolls, the main consensus is to re-roll for Iseria. Some might say to go for base Vildred, but that gets a lot of hostility from the Iseria fans, so Iseria it is. Older guides would tell you to get Sigrid, but you actually get a free copy of her sometime down the line. I made that mistake myself and you shouldn't either. Which now brings me to Wyvern hunts, the two words that will definitely set off the PTSD of the entire Epic 7 community. Because this is where the farming begins. If you thought the gear grind in Genshin Impact was bad, apparently this is way worse, and I am glad I haven't reached this stage yet. But of course, here are a few more buzzwords to find the E7 veterans in the crowd. Molagorago, pet food, and the endgame PvP. Also, now you can use flowers to promote heroes to raise their level cap instead of using a bunch of dogs that take up all your space in the character menu. And if you are new to E7, I definitely have to say, you should really be thankful for what you get right now. Speaking of currencies though, this game still has about 3 to 4 different gacha currencies, half of which I still have no clue where to use or find. The veteran players might know better, but for a new player, it can still be a bit hard to figure out where everything goes. You'll get used to it though. The game also has labyrinths that are great for farming for equipment and materials, and it's the place to increase your character's bond level through camping once per labyrinth run. You get different dialogue options that increase the affinity of specific characters based on their personality, and to top it off, it's fully voiced too, even for the collaboration characters. Just make sure you don't get attacked by a sea bear while you're doing it. And if you played Genshin, you thought you might have escaped from the abyss. Think again. This game has a place called the Abyss as well to conquer over the course of your playtime, with about 3 stamina per day, but on the bright side, you don't have to rerun it to my knowledge. And the other good thing about this game is that a lot of the downsides of the game are endgame concerns of heavy farming and its PvP-centric endgame grind, which you won't be seeing for a good while if you are still running through the main story as a new player. There's definitely plenty of story content from the main story chapters as well as side stories to run through for a new player, and finishing the story sounds like a deal breaker for the long-term play of the game, unless you are a veteran player who spent too much on the game to leave, or yet another cute anime waifu shows up on the banner for you to spend your money on to grind levels for and reroll equipment. Which is how the game truly ends. Or not quite, because it turns into an endless gear grind for power once you blast through the story. And now comes the verdict as a fresh Epic 7 player in 2023. It's about a high 8 out of 10 at the moment, maybe even an 8.5 at this stage. Because there's just something about this game's character and UI design that gives me the sense of nostalgia for true classic fantasy. Definitely worth giving a shot for a new player now that the game's become a lot easier to play. For the veteran players though, it's about 50-50 and many people find the game loses its charm once you run out of content outside of the gear grind and the heavy PvP focus in the endgame. Personally, I don't like PvP myself, so it's likely that I would just play this game for the story and then call it quits. But I will of course hop back in to enjoy my freshly rolled REM every now and then. Which goes to show that there are multiple ways to enjoy a gacha game, and you really don't have to stick around, especially if you don't spend money on it. Which I will always recommend when it comes to gacha games, if you possibly can. And so, as always, stay safe, stay humble, and may RNGesus bless your wyvern hunting. This is the Knight, and we will see you next time.